everyone, I'm Victoria from Trinity Mirror. I'm going to attempt to follow these three amazing talks. I'll get straight to it. So the brief was advertising is dead, long live, fill in the blank. I'm not going to lie to you, I was pretty angry when I received this brief. Advertising is dead. Yeah, I can't say that. I work in advertising. I mean, it's a £17.8 billion industry in the UK, which is set to rise by 7.5% this year. So it's far from dead. Yeah, and I didn't want to stand up here and argue myself out of a job either. But advertising has evolved, and that evolution seems to have sped up dramatically in recent years. Now, I won't take you back to the first newspaper announcements of the 1700s, or the first colour print ad for Dewar's Whiskey in 1936 for the Daily Record. But when the internet became widely available in the early to mid-90s, the evolution of advertising went into fast forward. From social media, from email marketing to social media to digital display to mobile and app advertising, the list goes on and on. It's too many to mention today, and there will be for the foreseeable future. But whilst the practice of advertising is as strong as ever, I think that there's an issue with the definition of advertising. It seems a lot of people have very varied opinions on what the definition of advertising is. So, where better to start than asking the industry itself? And I did get to have a little bit of fun here. I asked a number of my media owner colleagues what the definition of advertising is. This is where they all get a bit scared. They decided that advertising is a job for masking alcoholism, a career for people with geography degrees, brilliant, and a tool to help sell crap to consumers. Thanks, guys. Luckily for them, I won't name and shame them here today. I did also ask a number of media agencies as well for their definition. They decided that advertising is an attempt at selling their product or service as a dream to an unsuspecting audience. It's inspiration to help you spend your cash. I mean, why else would anyone buy oxygenated beauty water and beautifying snail slime? And finally, absolutely effing everywhere from an advertising agency. And I did ask a client the same question as well. And I think, unsurprisingly, the client answered advertising is all about being first. But I did have a look on the IPA's website and what their definition of advertising was. And under their definition, it states, increasingly though, definitions of advertising have had to take on board new communications opportunities. The explosion of media channel opportunities, including social, have made the advertising environment much more complex. So even the Institute for Practitioners in Advertising can't decide. No. But whilst I stand here debating the definition of the word, it does seem that we're a rather self-indulgent industry and have actually completely forgotten to ask the people who matter, the consumers. I'm lucky enough to have access at work to a consumer research panel called Mouthpiece, and I asked a panel of consumers a variety of questions from what have you been discussing in the last week with friends or family to would the world be a better place without advertising? And the results were pretty conclusive. In the last month, 27% had spoken with friends or family about an advert that they'd seen. And when asked about other advertising, a resounding 59% had spoken about the Ice Bucket Challenge in the last week alone. I was surprised to find they were savvy enough to identify it as advertising. And yes, that's me doing my Ice Bucket Challenge there. To touch on a few other ads mentioned, there was a wide variety. The meerkats featured heavily as being funny and original, and they spoke with friends and family about how cute they are. One respondent recalled the Lidl ad fondly as it showed their high-quality products at lower prices. So it was the information that she gained that encouraged ad recall here. To touch on a few others mentioned, there was Mo Farah in the corn ad. We had the dancing pony for £3. Should have gone to Specsavers for that infamous Suarez bite in the World Cup. And Iceland for their price-led adverts. But from sifting through all these results, it becomes increasingly apparent that consumers are likely to recall ads that are either relevant, entertaining, or informative. And to touch on informative for a second, An independent agency discovered that over 1 in 3 consumers find adverts helpful when deciding what products to buy. And really interestingly, that number shoots up to over 51% when asking the exact same question of 18 to 34-year-olds. So we're clearly moving in the right direction. But back to the matter in hand. And I did ask our panel what their definition of advertising was. We had a number of similar responses, such as making people aware of a service or product and encouraging them to purchase it, and information about goods or services for sale. There was a couple of negative responses, such as interruptions to my television programmes and lots of media hype about stuff I don't want to know about. But I'm sure those respondents would feel differently if all the adverts they saw were relevant and informative for them. And in fact, when I asked them if advertising was a good or bad thing, only 8% said that it was a bad thing. And luckily, for all of us, it was a resounding no when asked if the world would be a better place without advertising. And a colleague of mine backed this up really nicely the other day. I was speaking to Rupert Howell, who's a former president of the IPA, and he was telling me about the time he visited Moscow in 1989 before advertising was permitted. He said the city was grey, dull, and quite frankly, pretty scary. But fast forward 15 years later, and he visited a totally different Moscow, a hugely colourful city and really, really vibrant, largely thanks to advertising. It was a sign of the free world, and consumers welcomed it. And I mean, the industry went into panic with the release of digital television recorders, petrified that everyone was going to skip all the adverts. But people didn't buy these boxes to skip the ads. They bought them just to find content that they wanted to watch. According to Sky View panel data, only 17% of viewing is actually time shifted. And of that, 30% still watch the adverts at normal speed anyway. Channel 4 made a TV programme called The 100 Greatest TV Ads. 3.3 million people tuned in to watch that. An entire programme just on adverts, and more have been made since as well. Just to touch on that also, I was at Proms in the Park the other week as well, and I just overheard an audience member say, "Oh, I really like it when they play stuff from the ads." And then, and also, I mean, to go back to that, The Dancing Pony for 3, that's had 9.5 million hits on YouTube. That's people actively seeking out that advert to watch. So firstly, if consumers don't differentiate between the forms of advertising, whether it's native, content, display, mobile, digital, etc., and secondly, they don't see it as a bad thing, then why as an industry are we encouraging them that it is? We're constantly asking consumers if they want to skip ad, or click the cross in the corner to get rid of me, get this content for free if you watch this advert, and the much used 10 seconds to go, 9, 8, etc. Cindy Gallop sums this up really well. She said, what all these messages all communicate is that advertising is a very bad thing, that people need to be tricked, cajoled, and deceived into watching it. So as an industry that's guilty of creating this chaos around the definition, we need to stop being so apologetic and live up to our responsibility. We need to stop offering mixed messages and stop encouraging negativity such as skip ad. We need to stop being so self-indulgent about what the word means to us as an industry and embrace it in all of its brazen glory, because this is what has led to the confusion in the definition of advertising. And it could be detrimental at a time when advertising is evolving rapidly and clearly moving in the right direction. So my answer to the brief is twofold. Advertising is dead. Long live the evolution of advertising. The practice of advertising has evolved since its humble beginnings and will continue to do so. However, we need to put ourselves in the consumer's shoes and stop overanalyzing the definition. We need to evolve at the same speed as the consumer and accept the ever-broadening definition, because they are the reason that we're here. They are the reason that our industry continues to thrive. And they are how I know my job in advertising will still exist in 30 years' time. Thank you very much.
Okay, that really took some guts. All of it. I'm going to remind you very briefly of the 4 presentations that you've seen, because it's now quite a long time since the first one, and it's fair to do that. And then you're going to vote. And just to let you know, obviously, that Tara Austin will be number 1, Aidan O'Callaghan will be number 2, Monica Poole will be number 3, and Victoria Smith will be number 4. And that after you've pressed, you then press the thing with send, and don't all do it now, because otherwise what's the point of what I'm about to say? Honestly, it's ill-disciplined rabble. Actually, I found this, some of this sort of remarkably brilliant, but you do have to remember that these have got to be actionable. Some of them were on the verge of actionable in a completely different way. You could actually take legal action against against some of the presentations that were here. But let's just talk about that. And they've got to be interesting, and they've got to be vividly delivered. Well, they were certainly all vividly delivered. First, we had Tara Austin's Advertising is Dead, Long Live the Queen. Lovely observation there about cultural bonding and so on. One memorable phrase for me, culture is what is inflicted upon us. In other words, we don't get to choose it ourselves. Of course, once upon a time, you never did get to choose anything yourself, so everything was culture, and now there's this big thing which is not culture. I particularly enjoyed, Tara, your Meryl Streep in the Prada film, if you remember. This is the kind of advertisement where Meryl Streep, as the editrice says to the dowdy PA, you think fashion is nothing to do with you, but you see the colour of the thing that you're wearing. Tara, you did exactly that about advertising. You think you're unaffected by advertising, but let me tell you that you actually are. Very good observation, incredibly annoying, but nevertheless true. So that's Tara's argument. Aidan's argument was disgraceful. There's no way about it. Long live bribery and so on. I like the joke about media fragmentation with that bit of just obviously put it in Google, fragment, and that came up, and then he put the picture in and so on. It really worked for him. And not only that, he actually tried to get your sympathy as a consequence of using it, which just shows you how talented he is at using everything that he has available to him. I couldn't help thinking that if you seriously wanted to bribe people to buy products, then in that case to offer them online pornography probably is the most successful tactic, providing you could convince them completely that nobody would ever find out about it. It would be very good. But I was on the verge of disqualifying you, actually, for what you did at the end, until I remembered that this is a marketing strategy very much like that used by News Corporation in order to get people in with the Premier League goals on the app, and so I've decided actually that you'd better stay in. Monica Poole's argument was Ubuntu and so on, and it was the presentation that made you feel that there really had already been a soundtrack written for it and scored by Elton John. The Circle of Life was very much present and so on. As I understood the presentation, Monica, what you were saying is you should sell Kentucky Fried Chicken on the basis that you'll be able to feed the children of Africa. And I think that is a very big argument. I will certainly am prepared to buy products on the basis that the whole of the world will be better. If you could get me a product which will solve climate change or something like that, then I am quite prepared to buy that and so on. And I thought it was a very interesting argument. And then Victoria Smith's what I can only describe as a piece of defiance, really, and so on. What is all this nonsense about the death of advertising? We still rake in billions of pounds, and it's growing. Stop being apologetic and make people sit through all our interminable ads and make so that they can't click off. Well, it's interesting. It's a risk. You have to decide when voting for it whether it's actionable in the sense that if you did do that, whether a whole lot of people like me with attention spans of about 8 milliseconds wouldn't just actually stop watching all the videos and do something else instead. That's for you to decide. Those are our 4, and very brilliant they are too. You're going to now whittle them down to 2 by voting. Now, vote. 1 for Tara, 2 for Aidan, 3 for Monica, 4 for Victoria, and send at the end. And I'm hoping that something will eventually come up here and it will tell us who the 2 other people are. Oh, somebody's going to come down. Somebody's going to come down and they're going to give me an envelope. Votes are still coming. This prompt has just arrived here. Votes are still coming in. We will let you know when the vote has closed. And then where it could advise me about what to do in the meantime, it's completely blank. There's absolutely nothing there at all. And on the speaker's briefing notes, there's absolutely nothing about any such conceivable delay. So we have a number of options. One possibility is that we now sing the Circle of Life.